Today, what we're going to be talking about is Substation Design Suite Physical for Inventor, and that's the P4I product. We're going to talk about mostly the release 8.4. We're going to review some of the key aspects of the 8.4 release and a little bit on Conduit Schedule, and that's our key area. So I have some names down here. I'm Steve Kaufman. That's who's talking. And those who don't know me, here's my LinkedIn page, so you can see I am a human being. I'm not an AI, just so you know. And then we'll go into my email address. We have an events page on Spatial Biz with the events email. So if you can whitelist that email, you will be invited to these easily. And you get whitelisted through your IT department or whoever might want to block it. So this is where we're going to start. I'm going to go on to the next page here, and we have 40 minutes, about maybe an hour at most. We got to end at an hour. That's a hard shut off. So I hope to talk for about 40 minutes, and then we'll do any Q&A, and we'll go from there. Oh, somebody's got 15 people in the room with pizza. So I didn't involve any pizza. Sorry, I couldn't give away pizza today. So we're going to go on. These are the key things we're going to talk about. Physical 8.4 release. And talk about resolved issues and Conduit Unit Length Enhancement. Those are our three key things. The first thing I want to talk about is the release notes. I talked to a number of people and they say, well, they haven't seen release notes and they don't know where they are. I have a screenshot of the release notes, but I'm going to go into the website. I go into the website and we're going to jump into the SBS Portal. And then if you have access to go into downloads, you can come into the SDS software. And Autodesk Inventor is where we want to look. And this is where we're getting down to where the release notes are. So we have our downloads up here. We have a number of files that you can download. You can download basic training models and play with those models if you wish. But down here at the very bottom are the release notes. So I do get people asking about the release notes. So they're down here on the bottom. If you right-click, you can download. And the release notes are continuous. It's all appended from the previous release. So it keeps going down for several releases. But here are the release notes. So I want to make sure that we're aware of that. I did have questions on that, and I want to make sure that is known. So I want to look at the release notes. That's going to be my next tab here. And when we talk about a Substation Design Suite, and when we do a new release, majority of our release is feedback from users, right? If we don't get feedback from you, you're not going to get hurt, right? So if you look at the bold ones in here, I'm going to make this a little bit wider. If you look at all the bold ones, A and C, on the enhancements is feedback from our users, right? So it's a conduit placement for unit length. We will be talking about this today, and we will be talking about a new tool for removing lightning work points. So these are feedback from you guys telling us, hey, this is something I would like, or something or something that isn't working as well as you would like it to work. So if you roll down here, you can see a number of bold ones here, and there's quite a few fixes on here. There's a list of 12. You might not think that's that many, but the number of artifacts that to change some of these are quite a few. You'll see the number of artifacts to change that. That does add up. So these are the key things that the bold ones are the bold ones, are the key ones that are feedback from you guys. Okay. So what I'm going to go on back into my PDF. And I'll go on Oh, I want to go on the bottom of that PDF. I'm sorry, I didn't get down all the way down to the bottom. I want to talk about this very bottom piece here. So 8.4 does not currently support Inventor 2025. So we will be supporting 2025 this summer. So SDS-P4I version 8.4.1 will be released this summer. Possibly September. I think September is still summer, I think. So we'll see what happens. And it will be compatible with Inventor 2022 through to 2025. All right. So there was a major change with Microsoft, and because of Microsoft, a big change with Inventor for 2025. So this new release 8.41 will be compatible with right through 2022 to 2025. So I'm already talking to people who are planning on moving to 2025. We'll go from there. If anyone is using previous to 2022, just put in the chat or in the questions that you're using the a 2021 version as your primary. Most people don't realize Windows 11 requires Inventor 2023. So it's something to keep in mind that eventually if you're going to Windows 11, you'll need 2023. But if you're using 2021 presently, just shout out in the chat or the questions. And I see one is already has commented on that. I think most people I talk to are migrating to at least 2023 or 2024. And I've talked to a couple that were saying 2025 later this year or even sooner. So we're going to come into, let's go back into this page. We talked about this, the 8.41 will be released, and we're going to talk about the next page. So the key elements that I want to talk about, I just did those screenshots of the key elements I want to talk about with the 8.4 release. I'm not going to go through all of these enhancements. There's a lot here. Some of them are kind of maintenance type of things that were done to the software. Some are bugs and fixes, and some are just a cleanup of some of the software. So I'm just going to talk about a couple key items here. I'm going to come into my Inventor. I'm using Inventor 2023 right now. And this software, if those who are not familiar with Substation Design Suite, it behaves the same regardless of what Inventor you have right now, right down to 2021 with the 8.4 release. So it's going to behave the same across that. When we get up to 8.41, it's looking that that's only going to be for 2022 and further. And and of course the Substation Design Suite I'm using. If you go up to the About window up at the top here, you can see it up here, and you'll see that I'm using 8.4. So this is what I'm using. This is what we're using today. The one thing I want to talk about, the one artifact, was about bringing in fitting assemblies into our models. And if you recall from our documents, let's see, let's get into that other document. In the part automation document, which is on the portal website, I talk about in the last page in here, I talk about grouping assemblies for easier working in your model. If you bring in the assembly, you don't have to reassemble this multiple times. You can create default assemblies, standard assemblies that you bring in commonly, or maybe you can expand from that. And so I talk about these sub-assemblies that you make, that when you bring them into your model, that you're not remodeling them again, and you're not making any mistakes when you're remodeling, because some of these get pretty busy. You look at even this first one, there's 43 occurrences in this little guy here. So this is the type of thing that can make your life a little bit easier. So what we did to make sure that we have access to do things, if I come up to the fitting assembly. So this wasn't working. This had some problems. I shouldn't say it wasn't working. It was working, but not working well with model state situations. So if I'm going to browse fitting, And I'm going to browse fitting. I'm going to go into my fittings. I'm going to grab my assembly. So I made a little assembly here. I'm going to say open. But before I get to open, I'm going to look at options in this assembly. So I'll come up to options, and you can see I can change my grip of my bolting. If you look here, I have bolting on here, and we'll open this up in a minute, but I'm going to leave it at 1.75. So right away, I can pick a model state. So I'm going to leave that on there. I'm going to say open, and I'm going to attach it to this face. So now I've attached it to that face, and you can see that face is part of a sub-assembly. It's part of this assembly here. So it's always going to mate to the lowest assembly. And there is my model placed on here. If I open up this model, I'm going to go ahead and open it. We're going to look at that assembly a little bit closer. So we talked about model states when we placed it, and what is the width of the model state. So let's take a measurement. I'm going to take a measurement from the top here down to the bottom. I can pick a corner if I wanted to, whatever it is. It's 1.5. So this assembly has a model state of 1.5. So I'm going to change the model state to 1.5. And I do have one. There. Now I've changed my grip length. Not only will that change the grip length, because we're using model states, we can extend the bolt length and change the part number and description of the bolt length with that model state. So that model state's doing a number of things. It's, if you look at the on YouTube, I have a model state webinar on there, which I talk about instance model states as well as physical model states. So what it's changing is the length of the bolt. It's going to change the description of the bolt, the part number of the bolt, and that's going to be in your bill of material correctly. So if I go ahead and change this to, I don't know if I have the highest number, I can change it to a higher number, and I can have that proper description for the bolt, for the right size bolt for that grip. But that's not all that we did with this smaller little assembly. When you have a stirrup strap like this, or a stirrup like this, I may want to have it flipped on the other side. So let's look at our part again. We got our model state. I may want to flip it. So let's look at our representations. And we're going to expand that representation. And I got primary, left side, and right side. So if I click this guy, you'll see that stirrup moves to the other side. I'm not adding a part or deleting a part. I am changing how this is constrained. And I'm not making any breaks in that. So I'm going to open up this assembly. I'm going to make sure we see it. So this is the advantage of what we did by able to bring in a fitting assembly and bring it in and have model states and positional reps included. It gives us so much more flexibility on adding something. So here I can see I have my model states up here for the different bolt lengths. You can come along here and change my bolt lengths to whatever I need. But I have my right side, left side flip. So when we look at the right side, left side flip, we got to find that stirrup, which is this one here. I'm going to take a look at that, and you can see what happens with that. So using positional reps with model states adds to your flexibility of working with things. Okay, I do not have an answer for Ed, but we'll have to look into that later. We'll look at that later. See, if I ask them the questions in the by asking the question that gets recorded with the webinar, and I can review the questions after the webinar. So when I'm moving the positional rep, it's changing and suppressing. If you look at these, mate 8, 5, and 9 are suppressed. These ones are enabled, 2, 3, and 4 come to the right side. It's 2, 3, and 4, and the other one's suppressed. So this is what positional reps can do. By combining the two, we have these options. I thought the stirrup was a good example of that. I'm going to zoom out a bit. I'm going to close this. I'm going to leave it as it is. Well, I'm going to change that again. I want that to be on the right side, just to be different than this one. Now I'll hit save. So what we also have in here, because I was looking at this and saying, well, what do I want to do with this? I want to show you guys something. So I'm going to show you something. I'm going to run a cable. Before I run that cable, I have to go to my settings. Let's go look at our settings. I'll make this window a little bit wider. You can see we can stretch it wider. And I'm going to browse through here. One thing I want to point out is that one of the upgrades we did was able to wrap and lengthen the text in here. So that was one of the upgrades in the release. So I'm going to, I shouldn't have closed it. I'll make it a little wider. So here, if I come down here, you can see when we have long strands of text that we're making it fit the length where we can, and then we start wrapping it. Because we don't know how long it's going to be. So if you can see here, I got 16 characters for the part number. I'm getting very long characters, strings lengths for these. So we want people to be able to see it. And here I got 143 characters for the description. Here there's 122. We want to be able people to see it. So we want that flexibility. There's a number of people who have these long string lengths. I had one at like 120. So I showed 140 and 120. So I wanted to make sure that we saw that and that we have that ability. I'm going to come up here and let's get into, I'm just going to pick a size. I wanted like a 300 copper. I'm going to pick copper because I want to see it. I'll hit save. Now what I did here, because I was working on this, I thought, well, what else can I show you guys? So I'm going to pick 2 fittings to add cable. I'll pick this fitting to this fitting. And there's my cable. Simple as that. And my cable's coming into this fitting down here. I want to do the same one with this fitting on the other side. It's the same fitting, by the way. I want to make sure you guys know this is the same clamp fitting, 2709. And this clamp fitting I took from utility content, and then I added the changes for the work points that I'm about to show you. So it's a utility content fitting, but we'll see a little bit closer. I'm going to run the cable again from this one. I'm going to run it down to this one. Now, we may not like that orientation of that cable on this one here. So I'm going to find this fitting. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to look at what I have for model states. And lo and behold, I got flip points. I got a flip points model state. I'm going to flip those points, save it, save and save often. Now I'm going to update my cable. And there we go. So now what I'm doing here is I have a single fitting with the named work points. If we go back into our named work points, where's my document for named work points? For those who haven't memorized this yet, you're going to have to. I'm just joking. But it's good to know that you have this and you can download this from the knowledge base. When we get into our fittings, I'm looking at cable fittings, and what I'm doing here with the suppression and the model states can work with any of the work points. So what I'm doing here, I'm moving the guide point and the cable point. All right. So we have this in our document. I'm going to go back into here. I'm going to open this up, and we'll look at this fitting. So I have a cable point and a guide point. Right? You can see the cable point and the guide point. So one's on the left and one's in the center. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come in here and I am going to change that model state. I'm not changing the names, or I'm not changing the names of work points. I'm actually changing the position of those work points. So here now I flipped it to the other side, so cable's still in the center and guide points on the right side. You can see it flash out here. So this is the key thing we're doing here, is that I'm changing the position of that in that model state. SDS is recognizing that work point has changed, and now I'm able to come across. Okay, some of these questions are a little bit long. I'm not going to answer them right now, but I'll get you an email after the webinar. So this is what I'm doing to be able to do this. This is not the only type of fitting I've done this with, but I've done it with a couple other fittings. We also have the model state and positional rep for the stirrup up here. So that is one of the key things that we change. We're able to put that assembly on with the model state and be able to change it. The model state changed the bolting, the positional rep changed the position of the stirrup. The other one I want to talk about that came up in the changes that we did for 8.4 was arc slots. When we're placing fittings, bus support fittings onto insulators, this SDS is designed to look for arc slot to place that fitting. So if the fitting does not have an arc slot, which the vast majority of the bus pipe supports are arc slot, it's going to come up with an alert. So if I come up here into above grade tools, substation design, I'm going to come into select, and I'm just going to select this guy and come into here. And you can see it fit and it's fine. So we go back into our document. Now, where's my document? All right, so let's go back into here. I think it's right here. It's looking for that arc slot. I'm going to zoom in on here so we know what arc slot is, that I'm using the right terminology. So you can see how that is an arc on both sides. So it's looking for that arc slot to mate to the holes. So here, the arc slot up here will mate to two holes. And we see over here, I'm not sure, arc slot up here will mate to any hole pattern. All right. So this is in that document. I think I can zoom out. This is in the document of that I showed earlier. It's a key document. We'll go back into the part. This fitting here, I'm sorry, Travis Pattern, they came in without arc slots. They have changed them. So utility content is updated to have arc slots in their models, and that's the way they are manufactured. So I'm going to come in, and now I'm going to place this that does not have arc slots. And I'll place it on here. Now we get a window. Hey, this doesn't have arc slots. So your mating is not going to be well, all right, because it's going to be looking for arc slots. So it puts the one mate on the right height, but it doesn't put the other mates on to locate it. So it's going to slide around easily. So I'll show that again and just come up here. So you'll get that error coming up. All right, so I'm going to go back into my PDF and see where we're at. The other one I want to talk a little bit about lightning is going to be my next one. I did the arc slots, I did the lengths. So let's talk a little bit about lightning in here. I can't see all the questions, so I'm going to leave the questions till later, and I'm going to go on to lightning mass points. So one of the things that we had when we were working with some of our users, they were doing a lot of work with lightning. There was a lot of work in 2023 that people were doing with lightning. I was getting a lot of questions, and we're discussing how things can work. And you can see that I have some lightning. I have some points attached to the mast. So these points are part of the mast. I'll open up the mast, and you'll see that I have point up here, and I got some points down here. So these are attached to the mast. And if we come over here, I just have an empty part with some points. So I just wanted to show that this is the type of thing I was talking about to people this past year, 2023, of this type of thing. So we have our lightning protection item placed. And for me to place this, I wanted to place it so that the lightning protection rolled around my mast. And if you look at that mast, that is what it's going on. You can see the path is in the is that blue line. So the rolling sphere is rolling along that. And I had to pick several points. So if I come up here to above grade, and I'm going to show my mast, it's going to show those points that I picked. I'm going to highlight that again, and you can see the points that I picked are 2 points on the back side of that post. All right, I could pick them all, and SDS will only use the one it needs to, but in this case, I just picked the 2. And what happens when we're picking multiple points, I just have to turn off my dehumidifier off. What happens when we are picking a number of points is that we may have a lot of points to pick. So I'm going to come into my other PDF that I brought up. If you're in Kansas City back a couple months ago, I did a talk on lightning, and it was a good talk. And I'm going to try and get this up on the YouTube site yet, if Ethan will let me, and I'll get it up there with the webinar if I can. So I'm going to go to page 12. When we have a complex arrangement like this, we're picking a lot of points. We're picking I don't know, there's like 4 times 60 type of thing. So like 200 points type of thing coming up here to pick all of these when we have these real complex runs to try and get our lightning protection the way we want them. So what we added was, when I show mass, you can see the mass points. What we added in here is a clear all mass points. It's right now, before 8.3, I had to unselect the points one by one. I had to go through and select each point that I had by one. So if I had that big complex arrangement and I didn't like my point setup here, I can delete them all in one batch and try a different arrangement. We found that very handy working with customers in 2023. So if I come up here, I can show mass, come up here, I can delete all those in one button now. So this was single button. It sounds like a small thing now in show mass, and nothing shows. So it sounds like a small thing, but it's a big thing in time. When you're talking about picking 200 points to get your arrangement done the way you like it, it's a real time saver. All right, now we're going to get into, let's go back. I'm sorry, I'm flipping flopping here, but we'll go back into here. We're going to talk about the what we did with the conduit. So a number of these things, I think all of these items came up with our customers asking questions. So it's really, guys, if you ask a question, work with us, we can do what we need to do to help you out. So here is a model. And what we did here with the conduit, I'm going to come into the below grade tools. I'm going to look at my settings, below grade settings. I'm going to expand, open that up. We're going to take a look at conduit. What we added here is this little line here. Wasn't much to do. Talak did it in overnight type of thing, couple seconds. But what we did was putting that on, we're putting our unit length at 10 feet max. And this is adjustable to whatever you want it to be. It could be meters, it could be in feet, it could be inches, but you have to put the units in, as most of us know. And it's at 10 feet. So what that is doing is, when we are running our conduit tool, it's putting each piece in a unit length. All right, you can see this piece here. I'm going to open that up. And it's based on, it won't go more than 10 feet long. All right. So that is what is going on here. This is how we're placing it. So now we have a bill of material or parts list. So I'm going to come up to my assembly, bill of material, structured. And now you can see I have it all totalized in here. I did some work with this, but right now it's just totalized. So all my bell end pipe, that's I got 50 feet of this one and 40 feet of this one, all right, or 80 feet of this one. So I'm totalizing the total, but we are also having unit lengths of each one. So let's go what we can do in the drawing world. I'm going to open up the drawing, and here's the drawing. So we just saw that in the parts list. So this is the parts list from the below grade assembly. We got the 50 feet, we got the 84 feet of our conduit and 14 feet of steel. So what is that at unit length? So I'm going to show you what we can do with the parts list here. And as you know, with the bill of material parts list, you can export them to either CSV or Excel, depending on which list it is. But here you can pull this apart, and now you got basically a conduit schedule. So here's all my 1/2 inch piping conduit here, and I have 7 lengths at 10 feet long. I have 1 length at 7.5 feet, 1 length at 4.5 feet. So this can go out to your well, you can put it on your drawing. You can export this, of course. If I come into, I can export to an Excel file, and I have that listed as an Excel file if I want to clean it up further. But I have those itemized. I don't need to put in my drawing. I can do it the way I've done it always, but at least I have something a little bit easier to go on the other half. This was a request from one of our users, and this is the type of thing we can work with to get that out there. So the key thing here, this was a fun thing for me to do. I put a length round in here because we don't want this to say we had length at 2.5 feet and then one length at 2.49 feet. We want to round that, right? We want to get a rounded number in that. So I'm going to go back into my assembly. We're going to take this short guy here. I'm going to open him up. And what I did in here, I modified the part. So inside of the part, I've taken the length. This is the length we cannot change. I can't change this, right? We do not want to do not change, right? And what I did, I made a new parameter called length round, and I made that rounded up to the nearest 1/4 foot, which is 3 inches. All right, so I put a ceiling unit length on there and brought it up, and that is my round length. So I put that right into my model. So where is that done? And this we can go in detail at another time. I can't do it here in this meeting, but let's open this up. Come in here. So that is in the bus bent pipe part. So you can copy that out, put equations in there, and do what you want, but you cannot change the existing equations or else you're going to break things and you're going to be upset, and I'll be upset with you. So, but this is what I'm doing here. I'm rounding it up to the nearest 1/3 foot, or is it 1/4 foot, which is 3 inches. It doesn't have to be rounded this way. There's different ways. I was playing with different ways of doing it, but this seemed to be a nice way of doing it for what I was thinking. So we go back into our drawing, and you can see these are all rounded up to 1/4 foot, and you can see all the nice numbers coming up here. And same as from here, it's not to the 1/4 foot because it's the actual length. And we could put another rounding in there too if we wanted to in the part. So I'm going to open up. I'm going to show you it running. Let's go into, I just run it from there. So here's our conduit. I'm going to run a piece of conduit. And I'm going to say I want my conduit, low grade, settings, conduit. I don't know. Do I want 10 meters or do I want 3 meters? Right? I can do whatever number I want in there, and it's going to round to that. I'm going to hit save. And now I'm going to add my conduit. This rounding of conduit is only working on the key items here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's only going to be running on these items, right? It's not going to run with the trench tools combined, possibly in the future, but if there's a demand for it, it's that. These are the most common tools we're running. So I'm going to go drop to drop plus path. I'm going to go from drop, and I'll follow this path. Now I ran that at 3 meters. So my rounding to a quarter foot is not is going to be in meters. I should have stuck to a foot. But you can see now we have our different lengths. See if I can see the different lengths coming in here. Whereas before when we ran it, I'm going to run another one, the same one, but I'm going to turn off that switch and remind ourselves of what we did before. We didn't lose functionality. We gained functionality. So I'm going to take that off. I'm going to change my conduit depth to maybe a little shallower. 32, let's go to 28 inches below. Save. And this is what the previous tool was. So drop to drop plus path, the same drop. I think I picked the circle. Drop. And I'll pick the path. Well, an error occurred when we were running the conduit there. So I'm going to go back up to settings and show you where the error occurred. There's going to be a artifact written to correct it. We had mate align, and I'm going to run with grounded. So I have the unit length off, grounded, and this is typically how the SDS tool would work before the update. I run drop to drop plus path. I'll zoom in here. I'll pick my drop. I'll come over here, pick my drop. That sketch circle is inside of the part or buried under the part. And I'm going to run it along here. And this is the method it would run in the past. It would run a continuous run. If I open up this is a very long run, and we would have the length based on that. So having the lengths by default, see, this is 35 feet long. Having the lengths by unit length gives you the chance to do the conduit schedule. Back into here. What I also have in here is if we had time, this is the conduit schedule. It's 1242. I can do the Q&A, or we can, well, why don't we look at the Q&A and see what we have there, see what questions we can talk about now. And I do have a recording of all the questions. I had mentioned that there's several posts on the forums for Venture Autodesk to work with rounding lengths. I think I had a pretty good solution when I showed there as well. I think it's a tough thing to do and a little specialized. Send me the a link to one of the forum requests, and maybe I can share it with everybody at the consortium. How do I put a NEMA face on both sides of a connector? You can't. You can only have one NEMA face. So I'd be looking at using the model states tool and moving that model state, moving the dimension on the work plane to where you want it. So you can only have one NEMA face, conduit model, fractions of feet into inches. Well, that rounding tool I used is a fraction of a feet because I'm using a rounding by eighth of a, I'm rounding it by a quarter of a foot. So I could always change this to inches and round it by inches if that's the question. Where are you showing the bolt grips? Bolt grips. Well, that's part of the spacing in the bolting. So those who haven't seen it, there is a webinar on doing the bolting work on YouTube. So here is the bolt assembly. So the grip is from the face of this washer to the face of this, and that's what we are changing in these dimensions. If I change this, right, and you notice the length of the bolt is longer. So this bolt part number, everything changes name. If I come down to this one, part number changes again for that one. Planes to redefine the points, you know it. Yes. So I am where we're positioning the work points on the on that fitting. It's a good question. Good one to show. I fiddled with this a couple ways. So I did a number of things here, but if you look at the guide point, here's my guide plane here, right? I'll make that visible. So if we change the model state, there's my plane over here. That's all I'm doing is changing the dimension to the plane. Change the dimension of the plane, the work point moves. Can you show your model BOM of your GOAB model so we can see the bolts? Property data change in the terminal assemblies. Well, I had the bolt open. You're asking about this, it sounds like. If I come up into my model states, look at the spreadsheet. These are available to download too, by the way. There's nothing secret about them. So you can see the part number changes, description changes. I call it the gap, but other people call it grip. And then the length in the table. Okay, so when they delete a cable from P4I, it will delete the part locally, but not from vault. This results in orphan parts in vault. So if it was signed in with that cable and then you delete that cable, there's not much we can do about it. But if it was, if the cable was deleted, it deletes it from the Windows environment. So yeah, I can see a bit of a problem there. I'm not sure how we can handle it. I don't know what solutions it would be. But when you use the delete cable tool, if I delete this cable, that deletes it from the Windows environment that I'm working in. So it's going to delete it from my workspace. But if it was signed in with that cable, right, it's going to be a challenge there. I'm not sure how to handle that. Or checked in, I guess. If it's checked in, we need another solution. Yeah, we can run a single assembly for every run, but that's a lot of assemblies you'd have to do. Maybe we can work. There might be other ways to do it. So if we do a per conduit run, you can have your that's a lot of assemblies. If you do a per conduit run to know how much conduit used in one single run and did assembly separate for each one, that would be a lot of assemblies, but there might be better ways to do it. Why does a pick points to run conductor allow you to pick vertices that will cause errors? Well, that would be a good question, and this is why we do these talks. I know what he's saying. So what he's asking is if I pick, let's say if I'm going to run pick points to create cable, I can pick the point, and then it will say I can pick a corner, right? See how it's picking a corner here? I'm going to pick that corner, and it will not run. So that could be something to ask for a update. Okay, we're going to have to talk about Conduit again, guys. If you can send me an email and discuss what you want to do, maybe we can meet in line and figure out what some of these questions are, because it's a little bit detailed to work in this job. It says you can run an orphan search in Vault and do that weekly. So that would be a good solution for the orphans in Vault. run an orphan. Is that a special one? No, it's just a simple query, it says. So it's a simple query to look for orphan parts and do an orphan vault search. Okay, so if it's checked in cable that's been lost, saying that you may need vault admin to have the permissions to delete the files.